Hello again, friends, and welcome to another week's edition of SCLC TV. I'm Maynard Eaton, your host, and of course, our president and CEO, Dr. Charles Steele Jr. Dr. Steele, we come to our audience with heavy hearts today, mourning the loss of Dr. Barbara King, one of SCLC's closest friends. Talk about her, sir.
Well, thank you so much. Bishop Dr. Barbara King, who was a personal friend, not only mine, but of SCLC. And Mr. Eden, I remember when I first came to Atlanta in 2004, Dr. Barbara King was one of the first people in leadership role to actually welcome my wife and family and myself. We are elated over the fact of the memories. I just talked to her 4 weeks ago. She called me because we were working very committedly on getting her project off the ground in Ghana. As you know, she traveled Africa and throughout the world for many of years. But she had a special project there in Ghana. And we were talking about that. And we were elated over the fact that I was going to travel with her to Ghana because she had a big recognition that was going to be named after her. And she said, Steele, I want you and your wife to be with me. That was just 4 weeks ago. And sadly enough, we're here mourning Dr. Barbara King. And
as we can see, though, I want to say, as we can see, she wanted you in that picture, too, when you were honoring SCLC. She waved you up out of your seat.
Yeah, that was at our last convention here in Atlanta, Maynard. And I got so excited the night I was to give my address before the banquet. You saw her with my wife, as well as Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was also there. I got so excited about Dr. Barbara King, I was getting ready to introduce her in the water. My wife stopped me flat-footed. She said, no. I do this, and it's not tonight, it's tomorrow. So that shows you how much we cared and loved Dr. Barbara King.
Now, she also, though, we talked about, she was the head of the Hillside Troop Chapel, one of the few and early female heads of church. I mean, I was told back in her day, early when she started, women weren't even allowed in the pulpit, and some churches even today. But she started her own church and became an international civil rights figure as well, did she not?
Absolutely. I remember, even though I was in Alabama, I used to come to Atlanta. You know, we just crossed the street from each other, Alabama and Georgia. And I used to come over and meet with some friends. And I was in the civil rights movement in with former state representative Tyrone Brooks and Dr. Lyer and others, and Reverend John Nettles. All I heard was Dr. Barbara King, Bishop Barbara King, who was one of the first well-renowned female leaders in the pulpit. And she used to tell me the stories. Said, Steele, folks talked about me so bad, couldn't get no money from the banks. The banks wouldn't loan the church no money. And I said, oh, you had a church? She said, yeah, in my living room. I had about 12 members. And we wanted to build a church. And she was saying that no bank would even talk to me because I was a female pastor. But she remembered the fact from which she had come from, even though she's internationally renowned. And I respect her so much for that. Just 5-6 months ago, Maynard, about 6 months ago, she invited my wife and I over to her home. Lovely home with all that history, like a museum in her home. Yes, it was nothing but a museum in her home. And my wife and I was entertained for about 3 hours by none other than the bishop herself, Bishop Dr. Barbara King.
Dr. Steele, you're a civil rights leader, the head of SCLC. How will Bishop King be remembered? What would your eulogy highlight about her?
I wish I could give the eulogy. I promise you. I would, first of all, say that she was a lady of dignity, one of profoundness, one that motivated you, elevated you from the moment you would encounter with Dr. Barbara King. She knew all of the celebrities, and you can just name Oprah Winfrey and Maya Angelou, and it just goes on and on. Well, not even to forget about Gayle King and all of the rest of the celebrities that were stopped by her church, and they loved her, and she loved them. Della Reese, I used to have Della Reese. Well, I had Della Reese a couple of times to work on behalf of SCLC and speaking and doing her performance. But even with Della Reese, I mentioned the name Barbara King, Bishop Barbara King around Della Reese, and she just say, "Oh, that's my friend. That's my friend." And even Della Reese's husband said, "You know, Dr. Barbara King, I stick my chest out." And I said, "That's my friend." But the point being is that she will always go back into the history of the SCLC and the civil rights movement. You know, she's from Houston, Texas originally. Went to Texas and she migrated to Chicago. And she would talk about the difference between Houston, Chicago, and Atlanta, and the different transitions of people that took on leadership. And she also talked about the history of Dr. King. She was telling me how Dr. King had to fight some of the religious leaders to a large degree because they didn't believe in his philosophy of standing up and fighting for the people that he know his purpose in life was sent by God and conveyed by God for him to fight for. And she used to tell me how Dr. King struggled. And when he came to Chicago, how he didn't have the support. And even in Atlanta, Dr. Barbara King knew the history. And it's my favorite word, the historicity of Dr. Barbara King will live forever.
Well, among the Atlanta is known for its Black religious leaders, starting with Dr. King himself. I would dare suspect that of this vast list of standout preachers, Jasper Williams and many, many others, Bishop Barbara King would be the only woman we think of. Is that correct?
Absolutely. She would be the one. And it was not easy for her.
Yes.
It was not easy for her. And Dr. Barbara King would call me early in the morning, sometime late at night, and just pray for me. She said, "You don't realize, man, what you up against." She said, "But you hang in there. You have a purpose by God. Hang in there." And she would quote scriptures, and then she'll say, "Go rest your body." That's the kind of person Bishop Barbara King was.
On a personal note, that's just what I'm going to say. On a personal note, she heard I was going through some tough times years ago, called me into her office and said, and prayed for me. Said, "Man, God is with you." I'll never forget that. No pastor's ever done that for me, and I've known a few. But she made me come to her office and give me a prayer. When she knew I was going through some tough times, and she was there for me. I'll never forget that.
Great lady. Great lady.
Moving on. Thank you for that tribute to her. Dr. Steele, as we speak on a Tuesday, this is the second day of record-breaking early voting. In Georgia alone, 741,000 people have early voted, either by mail or standing in long lines. What are voters saying, sir, from where you sit?
Well, not only what they're saying, it's what they are demanding. They're demanding that when this election is over, African Americans need to be given some form of reparation. And we've never been compensated, Mr. Ena. I never stop saying this until I make my transition. We've never been compensated in terms of the transatlantic African slave trade. This is something that's not being talked about. And I give a pass, I give a rain check on that for now. But when certain people get in position who's supposed to represent the equitability and the fairness of our people, we want some compensation. We want some conversation about reparation. It's not enough just to put folks in office and then they glamorize they're in office and running around the world, but not coming home to African Americans. We're not going to tolerate that. All I'm saying is that it's great. And we're doing that for a reason. I think people see the whole picture now. All of us see the whole picture. is that politics will never deliver for those who are less fortunate and considered to be poor unless you pressurize the people who are elected to do what's right.
Dr. Steele, you always refer to reparations, and I always kind of challenge you, suggesting, yes, we need it, we should have it, but do you honestly think, from your political acumen, it'll ever happen?
Yes, because I know there's a God above. I know there's a Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. And I'll be less than a Christian if I didn't believe this. But I still say God help those who help themselves. You know, he could come down and just take care of everything we need right now, but he's not going to do it. He wake us up in the morning with a sound mind, a physical fit body, and an opportunity to collaborate. That word again. That's what's missing in the struggle of the civil rights and African Americans and fair-minded thinking people in doing business to liberate all God's children. Collaboration. You must collaborate and work on behalf of those who are less fortunate. God is not going to come down and do it. He wants us to do it.
Speaking of the less fortunate, Congress is now debating another stimulus package. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has rejected President Trump's overtures to accept a lower bid. It sounds like trillions, but she says it's minuscule compared to what folks really need to sustain themselves. Where do you sit from your political? Should she take the smaller package and help folks, or hold out for a bigger piece of the pie?
What she is saying, and I understand it, but you still need to do something other than a stimulus to take care of people. But this is what she's saying. Y'all don't know the whole story of the stimulus. That's right. What she's saying. That's a money factor that you're hearing in terms of even with the weekly stimulus package that's going to give people who are unemployed less than $600, half of what we got from the last stimulus. But what she is saying is that just because you hear that it's a stimulus package with X amount of dollars, you don't know the amendments to the details.
Right.
You don't know the details. You know, yeah, it's X amount of dollars. But the fact being is that there is a tail within the end of the stimulus. What is in the tail? And that's what she's saying. We don't know. And she doesn't know to a large degree what's going to be added to that because of the power of the Oval Office and the executive power as well.
She's suggesting there's a trick in what the president's offering now. But you're saying no matter what, poor folks are hurting even more than they have been earlier this year.
That's correct. People are actually, and not the average person, but people who are giving up on hope, actually searching through the garbage cans. And they're begging on the street. You know, don't forget, before the pandemic, African Americans lost 60% of Black wealth. You know, that's our homes. People being evicted. What in the world do you think we should do? So what I'm saying is that if you are a leader on both sides, somebody should have enough God in them to find a happy medium. And don't call it stimulus, call it a necessary piece of financial security that all families need, and bring it to the financial institutions, the banking institutions, and let those who can affordably pay the money back, give them a substantiated loan or hands up. Just like the Homestead Act of 1862, it was a hands up for people of the Caucasian race, white folks, in particular white males, and also white females. You could not be of the colored race or Negroid race to get a piece of the land, 160 acres of the Homestead Act. So don't call it stimulus. Call it an emergency act for those who've been left out and disenfranchised. Something needs to be done. It's un-American and it's inhumane to let Americans go around starving, not having jobs, can't pay the utility bills, being evicted, and you saying this is the best country on the planet called Earth. I disagree with you. God doesn't like it, and I don't either.
Finally, sir, that an example of what you're just talking about is at our front door. Our office is on Auburn Avenue, once called the richest Negro street in America. Now it looks like a homeless shelter. People sleeping in front of our door. It's a sad, sad situation just outside our front door, is it not?
That's correct, Maynard. Just 2 days ago, I was out of town, and then my staff called me where the homeless people just politely came up and used the restroom right in front of our entrance there. And one was so kind to put some tissue over it. But it was an inhumane treatment. My staff got to go out there and deal with this type of inhumane act by the homeless people who disrespect our office for whatever freedom they may have or people of color may have. It came from SCLC, and that's not from the white folks or Caucasian race. That's from African Americans. So what am I saying? They have lost hope not only in this government, but in those who have helped them to survive along the way historically, and that's right in front of SCLC office, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
Again, as we close, sir, our condolences to Bishop Dr. Barbara King and her passing. We thank you for your eulogy or your comments about her glorious life. This has been SCLC TV.
Thank you.